What was the experience like of you being selected to be the first human being to have a Neuralink device implanted in your brain? Were you scared? Excited?
No, it was cool. Um, like I was, I was never afraid of it. I had to think through a lot. Should I, should I do this? Like be the first person? I could wait until number 2 or 3 and get a better version of the Neuralink. Like the first one might not work. Maybe, it's actually gonna kind of suck. It's going to be the worst version ever in a person. So why would I do the first one? Like I've already kind of been selected. I could just tell them, like, okay, find someone else and then I'll do number 2 or 3. Like I'm sure they would let me. They're looking for a few people anyways. But ultimately I was like, I don't know, there's something about being the first one to do something. It's pretty cool. I always thought that if I had the chance that I would like to do something for the first time, this seemed like a pretty good opportunity. And I was never scared. I think my like faith had a huge part in that. I always felt like God was preparing me for something. I almost wish it wasn't this because I had many conversations with God about not wanting to do any of this as a quadriplegic. I told him, I'll go out and talk to people. I'll go out and travel the world and talk to, stadiums, thousands of people, give my testimony. I'll do all of it, but like heal me first. Don't make me do all of this in a chair. That sucks. Um, and I guess he won that argument. I didn't really have much of a choice. I always felt like there was something going on. And to see how, I guess, easily I made it through the interview process and how quickly everything happened, how the stars sort of aligned with all of this, it it just told me, like as the surgery was getting closer, it just told me that it was all meant to happen. It was all meant to be. And so I shouldn't be afraid of anything that's to come. And so I wasn't. I kept telling myself, like, you say that now, but as soon as the surgery comes, you're probably going to be freaking out. Like, you're about to have brain surgery. And brain surgery is a big deal for a lot of people, but it's a even bigger deal for me. Like, it's all I have left. The amount of times I've been like, thank you, God, that you didn't take my brain and my personality and my ability to think, my like love of learning, like my character, everything. Like, thank you so much. Like, as long as you left me that, then I think I can get by. And I was about to let people go, like root around in there, like, hey, we're gonna go like put some stuff in your brain, like hopefully it works out. Um, and so it was something that gave me pause. But like I said, how smoothly everything went. I never expected for a second that anything would go wrong. Plus, the more people I met on the Barrows side and on the Neuralink side, they're just the most impressive people in the world. Like, I can't speak enough to how much I trust these people with my life and how impressed I am with all of them. And to see the excitement on their faces to like walk into a room and roll into a room and see all of these people looking at me like we're so excited, like we've been working so hard on this and it's finally happening. It's super infectious, and it just makes me want to do it even more and to help them achieve their dreams. Like, I don't know, it's so rewarding, and I'm so happy for all of them, honestly.
What was the day of surgery like? When did you wake up? What did you feel minute
Yeah,
by minute?
yeah.
Were you freaking out?
No, no. I thought I was going to, but as surgery approached the night before, the morning of, I was just excited. Like I was like, let's make this happen. I think I said that, something like that to Elon on the phone. Beforehand, we were like FaceTiming, and I was like, let's rock and roll. And he's like, let's do it. I don't know. I wasn't scared. So we woke up. I think we had to be at the hospital at like 5:30 a.m. I think surgery was at like 7 a.m. So we woke up pretty early. I'm not sure much of us slept that night. Um, um, got to the hospital 5:30, went through like all the pre-op stuff. Everyone was super nice. Elon was supposed to be there in the morning. but something went wrong with his plane, so we ended up FaceTiming. That was cool. Had one of the greatest one-liners of my life after that phone call. Hung up with him. There were like 20 people around me, and I was like, I just hope he wasn't too starstruck talking to me.
Nice.
And yeah,
Well
it was
done.
good.
Well done.
Yeah.
Did you write that ahead of time? Or
No,
it just
no,
came to you?
it just came to me. I was like, this seems
Nice.
right, you know? Went into surgery. I asked if I could pray right beforehand, so I like prayed over the room. I asked God if he would like be with my mom in case anything happened to me, and just to like calm her nerves out there. Woke up, and played a bit of a prank on my mom. I don't know if you've heard about it.
Yeah, I read about it.
Yeah, she was not happy.
Can you take me through the prank? And,
Yeah, this is
do
something.
you regret doing that now?
No,
Or is it-
no, not one bit. It was something I had talked about ahead of time with my buddy Bane. I was like, I would really like to play a prank on my mom. Very specifically my mom. She's very gullible. I think she had knee surgery once even, and after she came out of knee surgery, she was super groggy. She's like, I can't feel my legs. And my dad looked at her. He was like, you don't have any legs. Like they had to amputate both your legs.
Oh, boy.
And we just do very mean things to her all the time.
Yes.
I'm so surprised that she still loves us. But right after surgery, I was really worried that I was going to be too like groggy, like not all there. I had had anesthesia once before, and it messed me up. Like I could not function for a while afterwards, and I like said a lot of things that I was really worried that I was gonna start, I don't know, like dropping some bombs, and I wouldn't even know, I wouldn't remember. So I was like, please God, don't let that happen, and please let me be there enough to do this to my mom. And so she walked in after surgery. It was like the first time they had been able to see me after surgery, and she just looked at me. She said, "Hi, like, how are you? How are you doing? How do you feel?" And I looked at her, and just this very, I think the anesthesia helped, very like groggy, sort of confused look on my face. It's like, who are you? And she just started looking around the room, like at the surgeons, at the doctors, like, what did you do to my son? Like, you need to fix this right now. Tears started streaming. I saw how much she was freaking out. I was like, I can't let this go on. And so I was like, Mom, I'm fine. Like, it's all right. And still, she was not happy about it. She still says she's going to get me back someday, but I mean, I don't know what that's going to look like.
It's a lifelong battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was good.
In some sense, it was a demonstration that you still got.
That's all I wanted it
sense
to
of
be.
humor.
That's all I wanted it to be. And I knew that doing something super mean to her like that would show
It's
her.
actually a way
Yeah.
to show that you're still there, that you love her.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a
Exactly.
dark way to do it, but I love it.
Yeah.
What was the first time you were able to feel that you can use the Neuralink device to affect the world around you?
Yeah. The first little taste I got of it was actually not too long after surgery. Some of the Neuralink team had brought in like a little iPad, a little tablet screen, and they had put up 8 different channels and that were recording some of my neuron spikes. And they put it in front of me. They're like, this is like real time, your brain firing. I was like, that's super cool. My first thought was, I mean, if they're firing now, let's see if I can affect them in some way. So I started trying to like wiggle my fingers, and I just started like scanning through the channels. And one of the things I was doing was like moving my index finger up and down. And I just saw this yellow spike on like top row, like 3rd box over or something. I saw this yellow spike every time I did it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And everyone around me was just like, what are you seeing? I was like, look at this one. Look at like this top row, 3rd box over, this yellow spike. Like that's me right there. And everyone was freaking out. They started like clapping.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that's super unnecessary. Like this
That's
is what's
awesome,
supposed to happen, right? Like,
so you're imagining yourself moving each individual finger one at a time,
yeah,
and then seeing like that you can notice something. And then when you
Just-
did the index finger, you're like, oh,
Yeah,
Cool.
I was wiggling kind of all of my fingers to see if anything would happen. There was a lot of other things going on, but that big yellow spike was the one that stood out to me. Like I'm sure that if I would have stared at it long enough, I could have mapped out maybe 100 different things, but the big yellow spike was the one that I noticed.
Maybe you could speak to what it's like to sort of wiggle your fingers, to like
Yeah.
to imagine that the mental, the cognitive effort required to sort of wiggle your index finger, for example. How easy is that to do?
Pretty easy for me. It's something that at the very beginning after my accident, they told me to try and move my body as much as possible, even if you can't. Just keep trying because that's going to create new like neural pathways or pathways in my spinal cord to like reconnect these things, um, to hopefully regain some movement someday.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, I know it's bizarre, but
So that's
I
part of the recovery process, is
it
to
is.
keep trying to move your body,
Yep,
and
just every day as
that's
much as you can.
and the nervous system does its thing. It
Yeah.
starts reconnecting.
It'll start reconnecting. For some people. Some people it never works. Some people they'll do it. Like for me, I got some bicep control back. And that's about it. I can, if I try enough, I can wiggle some of my fingers, not like on command. It's more like if I try to move, say, my right pinky and I just keep trying to move it, after a few seconds, it'll wiggle. So I know there's stuff there. Like I know, like, and that happens with, a few different of my fingers and stuff. Um, but yeah, that's what they tell you to do. One of the people at the time when I was in the hospital came in and told me for one guy who had recovered most of his control, what he thought about every day was actually walking, like the act of walking, just over and over again. So I tried that for years. I tried just imagining walking, which is, it's hard. It's hard to imagine like all of the steps that go into, well, taking a step, like all of the things that have to move, like all of the activations that have to happen along your leg in order for one step to occur.
But you're not just imagining, you're like doing it, right?
I'm trying, yeah.
Right.
So it's like, it's imagining over again what I had to do to take a step, because it's not something any of us think about. You want to
Yeah.
walk and you take a step. You don't think about all of the different things that are going on in your body. So I had to recreate that in my head as much as I could, and then I practice it over and over and over.
So it's not like a third person perspective, it's a first person perspective. You're
Yeah.
like, it's not like you're imagining yourself walking. You're like literally doing this everything, all the same stuff as if you're walking.
Yeah, which was hard. It was hard at the beginning.
Like frustrating hard, or like actually cognitively hard? Like which way?
It was both. There's a scene in one of the Kill Bill movies, actually, oddly enough, where she is like paralyzed. I don't know, from like a drug that was in her system, and then she like finds some way to get into the back of a truck or something, and she stares at her toe and she says, "Move, like move your big toe," and after a few seconds on screen, she does it, and she did that with every one of her like body parts until she can move again. I did that for years. Just stared at my body and said, "Move your index finger, move your big toe." Sometimes vocalizing it like out loud, sometimes just thinking it. I tried every different way to do this to try to get some movement back. And it's hard because it actually is like taxing, like physically taxing on my body, which is something I would have never expected, because it's not like I'm moving, but it feels like there's a buildup of, I don't know, the only way I can describe it is there are like signals that aren't getting through from my brain down, because there's that gap in my spinal cord. So brain down, and then from my hand back up to the brain. And so it feels like those signals get stuck in whatever body part that I'm trying to move, and they just build up and build up and build up until they burst. And then once they burst, I get like this really weird sensation of everything sort of like dissipating back out to level, and then I do it again. It's also just like a fatigue thing, like a muscle fatigue, but without actually moving your muscles. It's very, very bizarre. And then, if you try to stare at a body part or think about a body part and move for 2, 3, 4, sometimes 8 hours, it's very taxing on your mind. It takes a lot of focus. It was a lot easier at the beginning because I wasn't able to like control a TV in my room or anything. I wasn't able to control any of my environment. So for the first few years, a lot of what I was doing was staring at walls. And so obviously I did a lot of thinking and I tried to move a lot, just over and over and over again.
So you never gave up sort of hope there.
No.
Just training hard, essentially.
Yep. And I still do it. I do it like subconsciously. And I think that that helped a lot with things with Neuralink, honestly.
Yeah.
It's something that I talked about the other day at the all hands that I did at Neuralink's Austin facility.
Welcome to Austin, by the way.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, man. I went to
Nice
school.
hat.
Hey, thanks, man. The Gigafactory was super cool. I went to school at Texas A&M, so I've been around before.
So you should be saying welcome to me.
Yeah.
Welcome to Texas, Lex. Yeah, I get you.
But yeah, I was talking about how a lot of what they've had me do, especially at the beginning, well, I still do it now, is body mapping. So like there will be a visualization of a hand or an arm on the screen, and I have to do that motion. And that's how they sort of train the algorithm to like understand what I'm trying to do. And so it made things very seamless for me, I think.
That's really, really cool. So
Yeah.
it's amazing to know because I've learned a lot about the body mapping procedure.
Yeah.
With the interface and everything like that. It's cool to know that you've been essentially like training to be like world class at that task.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if other quadriplegics, like other paralyzed people, give up. I hope they don't. I hope they keep trying because I've heard other paralyzed people say, like, don't ever stop. They tell you 2 years, but you just never know. You're the human body's capable of amazing things. So I've heard other people say, don't give up. Like I think one girl had spoken to me through some family members and said that she had been paralyzed, for 18 years, and she'd been trying to like wiggle her index finger for all that time, and she finally got it back like 18 years later. So like I know that it's possible, and I'll never give up doing it. I do it when I'm lying down like watching TV. I'll find myself doing it kind of just almost like on its own. It's just something I've gotten so used to doing that I don't know. I don't think I'll ever stop.
That's really awesome to hear because I think it's one of those things that can really pay off in the long term. Because like it is training, you're not visibly seeing the results of that training at the moment, but like there's that like Olympic level nervous system getting ready for something.
Honestly, was like something that I think Neuralink gave me that I can't thank them enough for. Like I can't show my appreciation for it enough. Was being able to visually see that what I'm doing is actually having some effect.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of the reason why, like, I know now that I'm going to keep doing it forever. Because before Neuralink, I was doing it every day, and I was just assuming that things were happening. Like, it's not like I knew. I wasn't getting back any mobility or sensation or anything. So I could have been running up against a brick wall for all I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And with Neuralink, I get to see like all the signals happening real time. And I get to see that, what I'm doing can actually be mapped. When we started doing like click calibrations and stuff, when I go to click my index finger for a left click, that it actually recognizes that. Like it changed how I think about what's possible with like retraining my body to move. And so yeah, I'll never give up now.
And also just the signal that there's still a powerhouse of a brain there that's like
exactly.
And as the technology develops, that brain is, I mean, that's the most important thing about the human body is the brain, and it can do a lot of the control. So what did it feel like when you first could wiggle the index finger and saw the environment respond, like that little
Yeah, it
thing
was
where
very
everybody was being way too dramatic, according to you?
yeah, it was very cool. I mean, it was cool, but I keep telling this to people. It made sense to me. Like it made sense that, like there are signals still happening in my brain, and that as long as you had something near it that could measure those, that could record those, then you should be able to like visualize it in some way, like see it happen. And so that was not very surprising to me. I was just like, oh, cool. Like we found one, like we found something that works. It was cool to see that their technology worked, and that everything that they'd worked so hard for was like going to pay off. But I hadn't like moved a cursor or anything at that point. I had like interacted with a computer or anything at that point. So it just made sense. It was cool. I didn't really know much about BCI at that point either. So I didn't know like what sort of step this was actually making. Like I didn't know if this was like a huge deal or if this was just like, okay, this is, it's cool that we got this far, but we're actually hoping for something like much better down the road. It's like, okay, I just thought that they knew that it turned on. So I was like, cool. Like this is cool.
Well, did you like read up on the specs of the hardware you get installed, like the number of threads, all
Yeah,
this kind
yeah,
of
I
stuff?
knew all of that,
Okay.
but it's all Greek to me. Like, I was like, okay, threads, 64 threads, 16 electrodes, 1024 channels. Okay. like like that math checks out.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
When was the first time you were able to move a mouse cursor?
I know it must have been within the first maybe week or 2 weeks that I was able to like first move the cursor. And again, like it kind of made sense to me. Like it didn't seem like that big of a deal. Like it was like, okay, well, how do I explain this? When everyone around you starts clapping for something that you've done,
Yeah.
it's easy to say, okay, like I did something cool.
Yeah.
Like that was impressive in some way. What exactly that meant, what it was, hadn't really like set in for me. So again, I knew that me trying to move a body part, and then that being mapped in some sort of like machine learning algorithm to be able to identify like my brain signals and then take that and give me cursor control. That all kind of made sense to me. I don't know like all the ins and outs of it, but I was like, there are still signals in my brain firing. They just can't get through because there's like a gap in my spinal cord. And so they can't get all the way down and back up, but they're still there. So when I moved the cursor for the first time, I was like, that's cool, but I expected that should happen. Like it made sense to me. When I moved the cursor for the first time, with just my mind without like physically trying to move. So I guess I can get into that just a little bit, like the difference between attempted movement and imagined movement.
Yeah, that's a fascinating difference.
Yeah,
Speak from one to the other.
yeah. So like attempted movement is me physically trying to attempt to move, say, my hand. I try to attempt to move my hand to the right, to the left, forward, and back. And that's all attempted. Attempt to, like lift my finger up and down, attempt to kick or something. I'm physically trying to do all of those things, even if you can't see it. Like this would be like me attempting to like shrug my shoulders or something. That's all attempted movement. Um, that all that's what I was doing for the first couple of weeks when they were going to give me cursor control. When I was doing body mapping, it was attempt to do this, attempt to do that. When Near was telling me to like imagine doing it, it like kind of made sense to me, but it's not something that people practice. Like if you started school as a child and they said, okay, write your name with this pencil. And so you do that. Like, okay, now imagine writing your name with that pencil. Kids would think, like, I guess, like, that kind of makes sense. And they would do it. But that's not something we're taught. It's all like how to do things physically. We think about like thought experiments and things, but that's not like a physical action of doing things. It's more like what you would do in certain situations. So imagine movement, it never really connected with me. Like, I guess you could maybe describe it as like a professional athlete, like has swinging a baseball bat or swinging like a golf club. Like, imagine what you're supposed to do, but then you go right to that and physically do it. Like, you get a bat in your hand and then you do what you've been imagining. And so I don't have that like connection. So telling me to imagine something versus attempting it, there wasn't a lot that I could do there mentally. I just kind of had to accept what was going on and try. But the attempted moving thing, it all made sense to me. Like, if I try to move, then there's a signal being sent in my brain. And as long as they can pick that up, then they should be able to map it to what I'm trying to do. And so when I first moved the cursor like that, it was just like, yes, this should happen. Like, I'm not surprised by that.
But can you clarify, is there supposed to be a difference between imagined movement and attempted movement?
Yeah, just that in imagined movement, you're not attempting to move at all. So
you're like visualizing yourself doing it, and then theoretically, is that supposed to be a different part of the brain that lights up in those two different situations?
Yeah, not necessarily. I think all these signals can still be represented in motor cortex, but the difference, I think, has to do with the naturalness of imagining something versus attempting it, and sort of the fatigue of that over time.
And by the way, on the mic is Bliss. So like, this is just different ways to prompt you to kind of get to the thing that you arrived at.
Yeah.
Attempted movement does sound like the right thing to try.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense to me.
Because imagine for me, I would start visualizing, like in my mind, visualizing. Attempted, I would actually start trying to like.
Yeah.
I did like combat sports my whole life, like wrestling. When I'm imagining a move, I'm like moving my muscle.
Exactly.
Like there is a bit of an activation almost versus like visualizing yourself like a picture doing it.
Yeah, it's something that I feel like naturally anyone would do. Mm-hmm. If you try to tell someone to imagine doing something, they might close their eyes and then start physically doing it. But it's just
didn't click.
Yeah, it's hard. It was very hard at the beginning.
But attempted worked.
Attempted worked. It worked just like it should work like a charm.
I remember there was like one Tuesday we were messing around, and I forget what swear word you used, but there's a swear word that came out of your mouth when you figured out you could just do the direct cursor control.
Yeah, that's it. It blew my mind, like, no pun intended, blew my mind when I first moved the cursor just with my thoughts and not attempting to move. It's something that I found like over the couple of weeks, like building up to that, that as I get better cursor controls, like the model gets better, then it gets easier for me to like I don't have to attempt as much to move it. And part of that is something that I'd even talked with them about when I was watching the signals of my brain one day. I was watching when I like attempted to move to the right, and I watched the screen as like I saw the spikes. Like, I was seeing the spike, the signal was being sent before I was actually attempting to move. I imagine just because, when you go to say move your hand or any body part, that signal gets sent before you're actually moving, has to make it all the way down and back up before you actually do any sort of movement. So there's a delay there. And I noticed that there was something going on in my brain before I was actually attempting to move, that my brain was like anticipating what I wanted to do. And that all started sort of, I don't know, like percolating in my brain. Like, it was just sort of there, like always in the back, like, that's so weird that it could do that. It kind of makes sense, but I wonder what that means as far as like using the Neuralink. And, and then as I was playing around with the attempted movement and playing around with the cursor, and I saw that like as the cursor control got better, that it was anticipating my movements and what I wanted it to do, like cursor movements, what I wanted it to do a bit better and a bit better. And then one day I just randomly, as I was playing WebGrid, I like looked at a target before I had started like attempting to move. I was just trying to like get over, like train my eyes to start looking ahead, like, okay, this is the target I'm on, but if I look over here to this target, I know I can like maybe be a bit quicker getting there. And I looked over and the cursor just shot over. It was wild. Like I had to take a step back. Like I was like, this should not be happening. All day I was just smiling. I was so giddy. I was like, guys, do you know that this works? Like I can just think it and it happens. Which like they'd all been saying this entire time, like, I can't believe like you're doing all this with your mind. I'm like, yeah, but is it really with my mind? Like I'm attempting to move and it's just picking that up. So it doesn't feel like it's with my mind. But when I moved it for the first time like that, it was, oh man, it made me think that this technology, that what I'm doing is actually way more impressive than I ever thought. It was way cooler than I ever thought. And it just opened up a whole new world of possibilities of like what could possibly happen with this technology and what I might be able to be capable of with it.
Because you had felt for the first time like this was digital telepathy, like you're controlling a digital device with your mind.
Yep.
I mean, that's a real moment of discovery. That's really cool. Like you've discovered something. I've seen like scientists talk about like a big aha moment, like Nobel Prize winning. They'll have this like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Like,
that's what it felt like. Like I didn't feel like I felt like I had discovered something, but for me, maybe not necessarily for like the world at large or like this field at large. It just felt like an aha moment for me. Like, oh, this works. Like obviously it works. And so that's what I do like all the time now. I kind of intermix the attempted movement and imagined movement. I do it all like together because I've found that there is some interplay with it that maximizes efficiency with the cursor. So it's not all like one or the other. It's not all just I only use attempted or I only use like imagined movements. It's more I use them in parallel, and I can do one or the other. I can just completely think about whatever I'm doing, but I don't know. I like to play around with it. I also like to just experiment with these things. Like every now and again, I'll get this idea in my head, like, I wonder if this works. And I'll just start doing it. And then afterwards I'll tell them, by the way, I wasn't doing that like you guys wanted me to. I thought of something and I wanted to try it. And so I did. It seems like it works. So maybe we should like explore that a little bit.
So I think that discovery is not just for you, at least from my perspective. That's a discovery for everyone else who ever uses a Neuralink, that this is possible. Yeah. Like, I don't think that's an obvious thing that this is even possible. Mm-hmm. It's like, I was saying to Bliss earlier, it's like the 4-minute mile. People thought it was impossible to run a mile in 4 minutes. And once the first person did it, then everyone just started doing it. So like, just to show that it's possible, that paves the way to like, anyone can now do it. That's a thing that's actually possible. Mm-hmm. You don't need to do the attempted movement. You can just go direct. Yeah. That's crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy. Yeah.